This is the Meta 1 month overview reading for the month of February 2024. It's currently December 31st, 2023, 6:09 p.m. Eastern Time. Meta at the time of this reading is $353.96, that's USD. And the shuffle video that we're about to play for you for the February reading was created December 5th, 2023 at 3:26 p.m. Eastern Time. That's this video down here in the left lower corner. So the overall theme and behavior for Meta, we successfully turned resistance on like a year-to-date kind of scale or multi-day chart kind of scale. We successfully turned resistance into support, at least momentarily. It's crossed with a period of sideways rotation that ends with a fast sudden move higher. This is going to be a tricky chart, guys. I can tell you right off the bat because the majority of the February readings that I've done are super bearish. I mean mixed, but overall the theme cards are very bearish. This is maybe one of two February readings that I've seen that look bullish. At first glance, it looks bullish. Behavior around the highest high. There's an opportunity at the highest high for the month of February that will stand out amongst other highest highs throughout months highs throughout the year. So like if you compare this to like March's highest high or April's highest high and so on, this one will really stand out as an opportune moment. And then behavior around the lowest low, we have three crisscrosses back and forth through the same price level, confirming a bullish trend usually in the midst of that. And when you see the virtue card in the lower position, usually what you've got is a cross to the upside. So out of a low, right? Then back down to a low and then out of it again, right? So usually you see two lows with something like that. Before we go any further, I want to make sure everybody's aware the whole purpose of the channel is to transmute some of the competitive energy of the stock market into goodwill. We do that by following through on the rule of karma for the channel, which is the unwritten agreement between the universe and anybody utilizing this information for personal gain. It's perfectly fine to profit from this information. That's what it's here for. But more importantly, what it's here for is to make sure that you're helping other people. So as long as you're following through on the rule of karma, you're guaranteeing to be making the world a better place, helping other people, while you're also building wealth for yourself. So make sure to be that person. Don't get the universe shutting off the flow of abundance to you for not following through. You go to the resources tab of our website, Tarot for Traders. 5% of the profits, this is really easy. It should be paid forward to keep the flow of abundance going through the universe and to accomplish the goal of the channel, which is to transmute the competitive energy of the stock market into goodwill. Imagine if everybody in the stock market did this, how much better the world would be, right? So we can do a part of that. 5% of the profits forward. So there's links here. You can click here and donate really easy, or you could donate it to some other charity or give it to a homeless person. And 5% of the profits should also be donated back to the channel here at one of these links. If you're international, please use Wise, or you can also use YouTube tips. This leaves you with 90% of the money. Make sure to spend that money out of love. As long as you follow those rules, my friends, the universe is going to send it back to you tenfold for following through. We consider you an angel investor of the channel for following that rule of karma. So blessings to all my angel investors. Let's get back into it. So each card going left or right across the screen is numbered, right? Those are the dates of all of the trading days. But what's important to understand is not each card's energy is going to line up perfectly with 1 day of time. So there are going to be cases where the timing, you need to give it plus or minus 1 day of wiggle room. The sequence of events remains accurate nonetheless. So you should always stay focused on the sequence of events, and especially in cases where it's plus or minus a day of wiggle room. There's plenty of readings where you won't even need to do that, but it's important to know that. So on the first, we have an important resistance level on a multi-day scale that's highlighted. We flatten out around that resistance, and there's a notable decline on a 1 day chart there. Hard to say if we decline from the resistance or if we decline and then there's this move out of it to reach the resistance. It could be both, which somewhere between the first and the second is a bit of a rally, and then on the second, that rally ends with the halting of a bullish trend marked by a sharp decline through key support. Or I should say that rally is halted. There's significant indication that we may have a highest high here. Out of all the places throughout the month, there's several places where we might have a highest high, but this is really the strongest location, somewhere around the second through the sixth. We might even see it twice, like once here on the first, second, and then once here on the fifth, sixth. We'll talk about that in more detail at the end of the video. On the fifth, we have a notable move to the upside, reaching for a distant resistance. It looks like there's some sideways rotation on the fifth that ends with a fast sudden move higher. There's a prominent trough on a 1 month scale towards the end of the day on the fifth, and then a big move to reach a prominent crest around the cusp of the fifth, sixth. That's followed by a notable decline, a trough that'll really stand out. And we do sideways rotation there along key support. A notable move to the upside off of that sideways rotation there on the 7th, taking us to a peak midday on the 8th roughly, and then we decline pretty notably from that peak on the 8th to a significant trough on a 1 month scale there around the cusp of the 8th, 9th, where we attempt to establish support. Might even have a lower trough at the end of the day, hard to say. It's likely that we open higher on the 12th, but it's hard to say because it could also be that we have this big move to the upside to reach a peak or crest at the beginning of the day on the 12th, or it could be that we gap up and then we just sell off from an overbought crest or peak. But in either way, I think there's probably a big move in the morning. Doesn't mean we don't gap up, but there's a big move in the morning to reach a peak, and it'll be an overbought peak or crest that we sell off from through multiple support levels, turning into price swings on the 13th, and a prominent trough. Actually, there's a prominent trough there on a 1 month scale around the cusp of the 12th, 13th. Price swings into a crest midday on the 14th, sharp drop off of that crest. That failure card's hard to place. That failure card could be part of the price swings here. This is probably all price swings between the 13th, 14th, and 15th, because you got a really sharp decline card and you got a really sharp incline card, and before that you have price swings. So probably some real wild stuff going on here. At least one prominent trough. We might see it again on the 14th, and then on the 15th we have a big move to the upside, offering a trade opportunity that I'll talk about in more detail in the paid version. We've got 1, 2, 3, 4, 5 trade opportunities that I'm going to talk about in the paid version. Also, there's a peak around the cusp of the 15th, 16th, and then on the 16th another peak or crest and an important technical price level that's highlighted there on the 16th. It'll be important on a 1 year chart scale. Before we go any further, let's take a look at December and see how we did. This might be my worst reading for December. It's not awful, but it's definitely not my best. Notable low here on the 7th. That was the 11th, 7th. Okay, so we got that pretty well. This is a low right here. Pretty much nailed that. And then we came back to lows on the 11th, and then there's this big move to a cusp, to a peak on the cusp of the 11th, 12th. We got that. Would have expected a sharper drop here on the 14th, but that's that unicursal hexagram energy, right? We went from this move higher through resistance. We stayed above it briefly. We came back down. Abundance turning into a unicursal hexagram move to the downside, but then that's followed by a pop and drop, and there's that highest high there on the 14th. Looks like it ended up being highest high thus far on the 13th, so we were off by a day there. And then on the 18th, we have another highest high thus far. I got lows coming in here. I thought these were going to be like revisiting of lowest lows. They were not. So that's where it gets kind of not too good. But then at the end of the month, these cross-reading congruencies really kind of came in clutch, showing a highest high there on the 28th, right? These are cross-reading congruencies. They don't always line up perfectly, but this is a case where they do, right? The wealth card is the January high card on the 1 year. But as far as the actual trades, so on the 4th, there's a resistance level that you could play both directions in, and that definitely was the case. So you could have done day trade there on the 4th. You would have been happy. And then you could have also opened up a long position there on the 4th, and we would have had you close it on the 7th. That would have been a profitable trade. You also could have done a pretty notable day trade on the 7th, as indicated. All right, so here on the 11th would have been a good place to open up a long position, as indicated. And then we would have closed that on either the 15th. So that would have been a solid trade, or if you wanted to risk it and hold it to the 18th for better gain but higher risk, as indicated through the reading, you would have made a solid gain there. And then we don't really have any trade stuff to talk about at the end of the month, which is pretty awesome because we got the end of the month off, but there wasn't any real trade advisement there at the end of the month. So as far as making money in a really, really profitable reading, and also important to point out that the full card is an important opportunity on like a year-to-date kind of scale, so we should likely see that as a high. But I'll talk about that in more detail in the paid version when we get into the 1 year chart portion. In any case, guys, if you're interested in the paid version, this is the best way to support the channel. If you like what we do here, you want us to continue doing it without people following through on the paid subscription, we wouldn't be able to put out this content. They're the core foundation and a big part of the channel. I know every single one of you by name. What you're getting, guys, is information you cannot get anywhere else. That means nobody else gets it. It gives you a significant edge if you know how to utilize it, which might take a little to figure out. It took me a while to figure out. With that said, those trades on the paid version of the December reading would have been solid, even though the December reading was my worst December reading. You won't find it anywhere else. You scroll to our services, ASO Metapulse, scroll down to monthly subscription, click here to order. You scroll down to the meta, click here to subscribe. Or if you're interested in more than one of these symbols or crypto, you could subscribe for the all paid version. It gives you 30 days access to the paid version of all of these cryptos and ticker symbols, as well as Amazon, Google, and Nvidia, which you can only get through the all paid. It's our most popular subscription. We very, 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 very infrequently do you see a cancellation to this. That's saying something, guys. There's people who've been subscribed to this for over a year, which is when it started. They've been subscribed to it since. Why would they do that unless this was valuable info and they wanted to support? So thank you to everybody that goes and does that. And remember, you cannot find this info anywhere. There's nobody else who's crazy enough to spend 23 years of their life starving while trying to figure this out, with everybody telling them they were nuts. I'm the only one. Let's get back into it. So on the 20th, we have a period of erratic behavior back and forth through the same price level, in the midst of which there's a trade opportunity and a peak at the beginning of the day, probably a crest that we're revisiting there. On the 20th, there's a resistance level there that's highlighted at probably at a prominent peak there as well. And when you see the Princess of Swords, there's a lot of price change. Usually there's like back and forth. So you can trade both directions around that resistance, not at the same time, once at a time, right? So that resistance, probably a pretty good trade there. I'll talk about it in detail in the paid version. And then we have a prominent trough here on the 22nd, which could be another lowest low. It depends on if there's a big move higher and then we turn resistance into support, or if we just turn resistance into support, in which case the lows and the highs would probably be really close to each other. Hard to say if this ace of discs is a high or a low, but I can say that there's going to be a lot of price movement there. There is a prominent trough on the 22nd and a lot of movement to the upside to a peak at the end of the day, and then an even bigger peak, it looks like, on the 23rd. We might start off lower on the 23rd, but we should see a higher peak on the 23rd towards the end of the day. A lot of trade opportunity around that Princess of Swords and that Ace of Discs. On the 26th, we have a prominent move higher on a multi-day scale, breaking through a resistance level. We stay above it briefly, creating a peak, break back down through that same price level shortly thereafter with the full retracement. Prominent peak on a 1 month scale there as well. And then we get into sideways fluidity on the 27th, equal amounts of bulls and bear inflow and outflow. So sometimes what you see are price swings here. Sometimes it's a narrow range along key support level. Sometimes it's price swings. It looks like we probably see a prominent peak at the end of the day on the 26th, and then at the end of the day on the 27th that are probably close to each other. There's an important resistance level on the 28th that's highlighted on a multi-day scale. Looks like it's probably early in the day, and then we decline from there pretty notably into the 29th, where we should see an important support level on like a 1 year chart scale that's highlighted at a prominent trough there. The following month of March, we have a good amount of the March behavior should be bumping along resistance sideways, maybe breaking through, but bumping along resistance sideways really. That's about it for February 2024, my friends. If you like this information, please subscribe. It really helps out the channel. Most importantly, make sure to follow through on that rule of karma. We need you to do that. We're counting on you here at Tarot for Traders and the Investor Profit. I'm counting on you. Not to mention, it's the only way to get an invite to our Discord channel, which is a free private Discord channel only for repeated donators of the rule of karma rule. In other words, angel investors. So with that said, thank you so much for watching. I'll see you on the next one. Stay tuned if you got the paid version. All right, so 2024, the Ace of Wands features pretty prominently in 2024. I think the multi-year, the 1 year's on track with the multi-year. It looks like we're pretty much, I'm looking at cross-reading congruencies to see where we fit into the greater chart patterns. So here on the 29th, this is a really important cross-reading congruency. It's really, really solid. It's the Emperor card, which is the late February card on the 1 year. It also correlates to a low, and we have a strong probability of a low over here because it indicates a low. There's a low correspondence, like a double cross-reading congruency. Second one maybe that I've seen, and then there's a lot of indications that we should be at a low there. Often when you see the Emperor card, it's at a low. low. So the question is, do we see it more than once? And I think we probably do see it more than once. We might even see it 3 times, but I think we probably see it twice. And it's hard to say if it's here on the 22nd or if it's here around the 19th. But I feel pretty strongly there's like a lowest low here on the 29th. And if it's not the 29th, it's going to be very early in March. And we've got that. See how we've got that full card right here? And when we were looking at December, we had this full card, right? This is a really important opportunity here. Chances are that we have a bearish January, right? And then in February, we probably come back to that same price level there. All right, so from the standpoint of the 1 year, the cross-trading congruencies are pretty strong. Like I said, we've got that low at the end of the month. We're also visiting that fortune card is probably indicating a high. We don't see the fortune card here, but that like I said, there's that correspondence that this full card is the high, and it's the same, probably the same high as in December where we had the full card. Very, very likely the same high. We're waiting for opportunity at this bottom here on the cusp of February, March. It's probably in early March is my sense to open up a long position. But you could also take profits early in the month. Probably around the 6th, 7th is where we see a highest high. It could even be right here on the first second. It's hard to say. Or it might be that we revisit it. What I would look to do is I would open up a partial short at a highest high around the 6th, 7th. If we go higher on the 12th, 13th, I would add to it, but I think we'll probably end up in lows. You could probably take profits on the short as early as the 9th. If I'm wrong about that, it might be on the 13th, 14th. Or you could add to the short in the midst of those price swings, or that overbought crest on the 12th, in the midst of those price swings. You could add to the short at a peak in the midst of a rally on the 15th. And in a case like that, you would look to close the short very likely on the 22nd. If I'm wrong about that, which would be surprising in this, it looks like there's a low there. But if I'm wrong about that, then I would say you'd hold it into the following month, into that low. You might even be able to add to the short here on the 19th, 20th. There's a good short trade in here when we revisit a crest on the 20th. In the midst of that erratic behavior at a key resistance there on the 21st, prominent peak or crest, you could open up a short position and close that short position at an important support level after we have a significant amount of price change to the downside there. And then I would open up, when I close that short, I would open up a long, and you could close that long at the end of the day there on the 22nd, or you could wait until the following day on the 23rd. If I'm wrong about that, then you would close it at that peak or crest around the 26th, 27th. I'd want to be in a short position going into the following month. But as far as price levels are concerned, this is probably what we see for February. I'm going to mark this off. You want to go down, buddy? So that would put us somewhere around the 353 to 354, like the 354-ish range pretty much for the high that we see in early, looks like early February. So I would be looking for price range. If we hit that price level, I'd definitely be getting into a short position there. But the highest probable location of the highest high is either here around the 1st, 2nd, or around the 6th, 7th, 8th. Might even come back to it again here around the 13th. But I think the highest probable location around the 1st, 2nd, or the 6th, 7th, somewhere in that first week. Highest probable location of the lowest low, somewhere around the 9th through the 13th. And then probably the same low or an even lower one here at the very end of the month or the beginning of March. And then there's a possibility of a significant trough here. I think there probably is one here, but I'm picking up on it kind of like intuitively. So I put it as a question mark because I'm not certain about that. And then the overall performance of Meta in comparison to the S&P 500 throughout the same period of time, February 2024. Yeah, Meta outperforms the S&P 500 in February, but you can see the very similar kind of chart behavior going on here, guys. And with that said, that's the paid version of Meta for February. Thank you so much for supporting the channel with the paid version. Without you, we would not be able to put this stuff out. So thank you so much. You're a huge part of what goes on here. Make sure to follow that rule of karma. You know where to go. You know what to do. Blessings to all my angel investors. I'll see you guys on the next one.